Welcome to the Earning Freedom Program. I'm really thrilled to introduce you to my friend. Some of you may know him, my friend Luis Rivera. Luis has got an awesome, amazing story of having the right attitude, of setting clear goals, of figuring out what does it really take to get through decades in prison with your mind intact, with your dignity intact, and come out strong. Because there was a time when some would have said that Luis never would have come out. And I'm going to let Luis tell you his story. Luis, welcome to our program. What an awesome looking setup you have there. Tell us a little bit about that before we get into anything else.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Well, what you see around you, I got lucky. I was looking because you got me interested in all this stuff. It was all your fault. I hope you know that. But I was looking around for equipment to do something like, podcasting, because it's one of the few things that we who were incarcerated, you don't have to qualify for. You know what I mean? There's nobody to block you, and it gives you a voice to talk to the people and let them know what's going on out there. So that was the wonderful thing. Yeah. But I stumbled. And
you know the thing.
Go ahead.
The thing about doing that, Luis, is you and all of the people that we're talking to right now, we have a voice of experience in at least one area. And that one area is about what does it take to overcome struggle, to prepare for success while we're going through adversity. And I've got no doubt, Luis, that you're going to have the same perception that I have, that you come back out here in society and we see a lot of people who are out here working and functioning, but in their own mind, they're in a bigger prison than we were ever in. So we've got a role to try and help those guys come out of their own struggle as well.
Well, the one thing I recommend is stay hungry. Let me tell you, if you've had any discipline out there, if you started sticking and started working out and started doing your workouts every day and you're disciplined, when you get out here, you're going to be worth gold. Most of the people out here, believe it or not, are lazy. They're just getting a job to hold on to just barely make it. But those of us who've lost our freedom and lost everything around us, we know what it's like. We know what we want. Okay. And if you go after it with vigor, you're going to have no problem out here. Believe me. There's one.
Tell us about how you lost your freedom. Tell our audience when you lost your freedom and what the mindset was like when it all started.
The biggest thing that happened with me is, I was young and I wanted to aspire to doing things. I got into aviation, and unfortunately, aviation is a very, very expensive hobby. And you're hanging around people who have a lot of money, who are driving very nice cars, and before you know it, you want to do the same thing. And some of the kids that are flying out there, they're rich kids, and so they're able to just move up in the world much faster than you, and you want some of that. So before you know it, the wrong people are offering you little bits at a time, and then you're involved. You're knee deep in it, and you think you're being successful because you're being successful in the wrong field. Okay, you're smuggling drugs or doing whatever you're doing, but it's not a realistic lifestyle. It's a self-destructive lifestyle.
And how did that end up for you?
Life without parole plus 140 years.
And what year did you go into the system, Luis?
1985.
1985 with life plus 140. Tell us a little bit about what the Bureau of Prisons was like so many years ago.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, because I sound like one of those old men that, saying, oh, you think you got it rough, you should have seen us back then. They didn't even feed us or give us air. No, it was much rougher, because anywhere you went, you were transported by bus. I don't care if you're going across the United States, you went by bus. They had one or two old airplanes out there, and if you're lucky, you got on it. And it was very uncomfortable, but at least it was better than a bus. If not, you would drive anywhere from 8 to 10 or 12 hours a day. They'd check you into a little jail somewhere in some little Podo County, and you usually wouldn't get into a bed until about 12 or 1 o'clock at night, and then they wake you up about 3 or 4 hours later to start it all over again. It was rough, very, very uncomfortable.
Where did you start your journey?
I started in Oklahoma, and probably the first federal prison would be El Reno, Oklahoma.
Oh, so even with a life sentence, you started in a medium then?
Oh, yeah. Back then you could, if you didn't have extreme violence or anything like that. It wasn't until right about 92 where they came up with the the Bureau of Prisons came up with a policy that said if you had life or X amount of years to serve, that you had to serve them in a penitentiary.
Okay, I started in a pen, but it was they had the thing. And then I know they did. They had it back then, Luis. It was if you had 30 or more, you had to go to a USP, but they could give you a management variable. You were young, weren't you?
Yes, I was 27 when I went in. 26, 27.
27. And tell us about your journey. Like, what were your stops along the way? Because you were in for a long time.
Yeah, the first place, they take you to El Reno. That's where they process you. I don't care if you are in Miami, Florida, and you're going to Orlando, they still sent you to Oklahoma, El Reno, and they processed you. And then they'd send you out from there. From El Reno, I had to work my way all across the United States, going from El Reno to Texas, Mississippi, to
Tell
Georgia.
us the names of the institutions where you were.
Okay, now these weren't where I were. This is just trying to get there. Ashland, Kentucky was the first official place.
Okay.
Then I spent about 5 years there. I got lucky, and they were changing over Lexington, Kentucky from an all-female prison, and they were going to eventually make it to a male prison. And they were sending the girls out every time a busload of men would come in. The women would go out. But it was co-ed for that brief period of time, and it was great. Fantastic. It was like giving me a year furlough right there.
Co-ed prisons. Yeah, a little different from the Bureau of Prisons today. So you go from El Reno to Ashland to Lexington. What's next?
From Lexington, I went to, what's that place? Pennsylvania. McKean, Pennsylvania.
McKean? Were you at McKean then with Dennis Luther?
Yes, I was. And you were there
the dream. I went to McKean. I didn't get to McKean till, I don't know, 1995, I think. Or I don't even remember. The years are a blur, right? I think it was 1995, 96 I got to McKean.
Okay, because I left there about 95 or so. Anyway.
Yeah, I was a long time ago.
McKean was a very nice place. It was interesting. Dennis Luther knew how to run a prison. He really did. He understood how to control inmates, and it wasn't by brute force. He tempted you. That's when they used to have the inmate benefit fund stores. And it was a little store that you walk into, and you could order nice tennis shoes, sweatshirts, hats, stuff like that. And he had a big policy where when you walked in, there was a big sign that said you're only allowed like 2 pair of tennis shoes, X amount of shirts. But they would sell you all you wanted. And that was his little trick. And then you walk into, a guard would walk into a room, and he might see 10 pair of brand new tennis shoes under the bed, and he wouldn't touch it until you got in trouble. And when you did, that's when you paid. He sent what we called the IRS over. This guy, once you got convicted of whatever you were and you went to the hole, this man would make you send it all home or donate it. But if you were good when you got out, you could buy it all over again. So you got that feeling of purchasing and losing. So you wanted to stay good.
It was his idea of managing through the use of incentives rather than just the threat of punishment. So it was pretty cool there.
It worked.
You went from McKean. Where'd you go next?
McKean, Pennsylvania, that's when they came up with the policy that said if you had 30 years or more to serve. And they sent me to Petersburg, the penitentiary over there.
Petersburg or Lewisburg?
I'm sorry, Lewisburg. And,
so you were in Lewisburg for a while?
Yeah, just for about 6 months. And what it is, we filed this little suit, and the Bureau of Prisons got a hold of it real quick and said, well, listen, there is a management variable that said if you hadn't been in any trouble, that you can remain where you're at. So they sent me from there to what's that other place? Jeez.
Did you go from USP to FCIs from that point forward, or did you ever have to go back to a USP?
I went back to an FCI. That was Talladega, Alabama. That's where they sent me. They sent me to Talladega. Alabama. And Talladega, Alabama, I was there, and then they had the riots there, the big riots back there in 95. And I stayed there for a few more years. And after that, I wound up getting into a problem. Somebody said I was trying to get away. And so they sent me back to the penitentiary into Lompoc, California.
Okay.
That was an interesting place, Lompoc had a lot of activity going on there,
So from Lompoc, where do you go?
From Lompoc, they were going to send me to, what was that place in the desert right over there in Lompoc?
Victorville.
Victorville. But they kept having too many problems. Everybody from Lompoc they sent over there was tearing the place up. And they finally said, hey, no more people from Lompoc. And they sent the last 2 buses of us, because they were shutting down Lompoc, turning it into a medium. They sent us out. And I wound up in Coleman, Florida, in the penitentiary there.
And then you went to a medium, Coleman medium?
Yes. After a few years, I wound up going to the medium.
So all in all, you did how many calendar years, Luis?
Total of 30.
30 calendar years. And what's amazing right now is you go in there with life plus 140 years, but yet now you're outside in society in an extraordinarily looking studio with very professional looking equipment, building your life. And I would like you to talk with us a little bit about how the decisions that you made in prison positioned you so that you could eventually get out. How did you get out? And what did you do while you were inside that allowed you to get out? Because I got to believe when you're doing life plus 140, there's a lot of days when you're feeling the hope dissipate.
Yeah, there is. The biggest problem that you have, Mike, is that in this business, when you first go in, you never know how serious the situation is. Okay. You're meeting some people who are, a lot of them are just the usual, what do you call it, nondescript type criminals. But there are some people in there that are very serious, deadly serious. And they generally filter down from the higher penitentiaries into the mediums, but they're generally quiet, but you never know who you're dealing with. I kept seeing a lot of people, and I've talked to them, people who were what I call repeat, not only repeat offenders, but repeat getting out and coming back to prison. And I would ask them why. And basically, like they said, when they got out there, they weren't prepared for the world. They couldn't keep up. And they got discouraged and they'd do something stupid. So early on, I didn't want to be like that. So I figured I had to go a different way. I had to go wherever the crowd was going in prison, you have to veer off and find a different route and go that way. Go to the library, go to learn, take as many educational classes to prepare you. My biggest problem is I did not want to fall behind in technology and what was going on in the world. So I had to buy books and I had to study. So when I came out, it was very, very easy for me to integrate to everything. The only thing I did not know was, little things like credit cards and all the latest little gizmos, self-flushing toilets, believe it or not. You walk into a men's room and there's no handle to flush the toilet, and you're wondering, how is this going to work? But those are little crazy things that you encounter.
But you prepared yourself while you're inside because, there is no parole in the federal system, at least not for guys like us with the type of charge. Even under the old law, there was no parole. And yet you were able to get out of prison. Could you tell our audience a little bit about how that worked out for you? How were you able to accomplish such an extraordinary feat? Because I know a lot of people would like to learn from you.
The biggest thing that I can tell you is, like I said, I kept myself busy. You have to create your own life in prison because, on the street, everything needs you. You're somebody in your family needs you to do something for them. Your mother, your grandmother, your kids, even your dog needs you to walk them and feed them. But when you come to prison, nothing needs you. I'm telling you, nothing. I don't care if you think you have a unique job as a clerk, you can be fired, you can be replaced. Nothing needs you. So you have to create your own world and you have to stay out of everybody else's. Stay away from where the problems are, stay away from the gangs. Okay. You have to start trying to keep up with everything that's going on in the world out there. Watch the news so you'll understand, because you will. I don't care if you got the greatest lawyer in the world. And even if you have the greatest chance, it's going to take anywhere from 3 to 5 years minimum to get to court. Okay. And should you even prevail, it could take you another 5 years before they even let you out. So if you don't keep up and you don't find something to do, you're going to get in serious trouble. You start mixing with the wrong people, you'll get into fights, get into the hole, and that precludes you from getting out in the future. I knew one thing: if I kept a good record, okay, that would help me. And then I also learned a big secret from one of the officers one day. One of my counselors, he was telling me, he says, we watch you. You guys think we don't watch you. But Louis, I know everything you do. I know all the weasels that you talk to. I know this and I know that. So he kind of explained it to me that I thought, even though they weren't keeping copious notes, they knew what I was doing. So when I was good and I had a good record, they knew that too. And they would tell me every once in a while, I said, hey, you're doing real good. If there's ever a candidate to go home one day, said, you would probably be it.
Well, that's what's really what we're talking about is trying to spread this message to guys who are going in there into that system or guys who are living in that system to help them really understand how their behavior in prison has a direct influence on how they can serve their time. And when the opportunity presents itself, they're at the top of the list for consideration. And you went through many presidents. I mean, when you went in, President Reagan was in the White House. You went through President Reagan. You went through President George Bush 41. You went through Bill Clinton, George Bush 43, George Bush 43. What was next? I mean, you just were in there from one administration to the next, and yet you were able to keep your head on straight, to set clear goals, and to do one other thing that I'd just love for you to elaborate on, what you were just talking about, and that's staying current with the world. As you know, a lot of guys in prison live under this, well, what I would call a delusion, at least that's my perception, that the best way to serve time is to focus on the penitentiary or on the prison and forget about the world outside. I always rejected that advice, and it worked well for me. It sounds like that's the same thing you're telling our audience.
Well, up to a point, you're correct. You can't think of home and you can't think of the kids and all this too much because it will affect you. It makes your time much, much harder, okay? But you're right. You do have to concentrate on things other than the penitentiary because there is a real world going on out there. You have to think of what you want to do and how can you make yourself of value. I think it was, who was it, Einstein that said, don't try to be a success, try to be of value. When you're of value, everybody wants you, everybody likes you, everybody needs you and cares for you and will try to help you, okay? A successful person comes and goes. He might be popular today and he falls out later because he is of no real value. He just happens to be a flash hit, you know, the kid for the day. So you have to find something that's going to make you useful out on the street, okay? Your education is the number one thing. Lose everybody else. If they're not doing the same thing that you're doing, trying to better themselves, don't hang around them. Go somewhere else, you know, because they will drag you down.
That doesn't only help a person while he's in prison, it also helps him build support systems while they're outside. And I know that you found some support to come into your life and that were willing to stake their own reputation on the line to help you. Could you tell us a little bit about that type of relationship, why you were able to find mentors and support groups outside that were willing to help you?
The biggest thing is you have to stay in contact with people and you have to be honest with them. A lot of people will want to pity you because, well, they feel sorry for you that you're in prison. But you have to also tell them, hey, they just didn't drag me off the street and throw me in here for no reason. I earned my way in here, okay? And when they hear that you understand that you created your own problem, okay, then they're more willing to help you get out of your problem. Okay, but if you sit there and try to tell them, oh, no, it's, you know, I got a bad rap, the judge hated me and all this other nonsense, well, people don't care for you and they will drift away after a little while. But I kept doing it and I kept trying to find people who were currently doing what I wanted to do. If I was into electronics, I would see people or you know, in a magazine or newspaper talking about it, I would write them and say, I read your article, I was very interested in this, can you help me further? Could you tell me which way to go? And people would do that because they really want to help people. They want to help somebody else climb that ladder and move up.
Could you tell us a little bit, are you at liberty or can you not talk about some of the people that came into your life and helped you?
Well, no, I'm at liberty to help. The biggest people that did the most was like Julie Stewart. You know, what an amazing person she is. She runs family.
Tell us a little bit about how you got in touch with Julie and how it was that she had an influence in helping you come back to society.
Well, you know, in prison, the difference between prison and outside in the street is in your neighbors, your homes are further apart. They have curtains and doors and you can't see what they're doing. In prison, you see what your neighbor's doing. So a guy who tells you he's all this and he does that and he works out, but that you never see him go outside. You see him eating chocolate bars and ice cream all day. You know he's not a very truthful person, okay? When one day Julie Stewart was invited to come down and give us a message at McKean, Pennsylvania, it was like weeks before she agreed to do this. On the day it was a super bad snowstorm. I mean, so bad that they had to put ropes on our institution so we could find our way back to the unit. That's how bad the storm was. You could not see one unit to another, and people would fall off in ditches. This lady still came there in that blinding snow all the way from Washington, D.C. to Pennsylvania because she made a promise to us, and she kept it. That impressed the hell out of me. You know, that I said, that's the kind of person I want to associate with. All right. Mm-hmm. So when she came there, the storm was so bad they would not bring the inmates out of their units to hear her speak in the chapel. So I videotaped it. Okay. And then we played it across the in-house channel. All right. And from there, we wrote each other and became friends. And, you know, I did a lot of things while I was institution of helping raise money for FAM and do things and donate to them. When one of our clubs got shut down, we had thousands of dollars saved in our account and a lot of videotapes. And we donated it all to FAM so they could sell and make money and whatever. And we had a long relationship of writing and talk to each other, you know, about the law and everything like that. And every once in a while I would tell her about, you know, the FAMgram that she put out and say, hey, tone this down, or you should try to do this. And believe it or not, she wrote back and she did it. You know, that was the nice thing about her. She was such a wonderful person. Mm-hmm. So we developed that kind of relationship, and all the way through to the very end, you know, we kind of lost each other the last few years. And then a friend of mine, Joan, had written her donating money. And she said, hey, are you Lewis's friend, Joan? She said, yes. And she said, where is Lewis right now? I've lost him. Well, as soon as my friend told her, she wrote me and we got in contact. I called her and we were talking. He says, listen, I'm going to get you out, you know, and she did. She worked on it for several years and got me several lawyers. And finally, the last one, whoa, that guy was it. Sam Sheldon. What a man. I'm telling you.
Sam is something. But Luis, I think that there's a great takeaway in what you've just told our audience, and I'm hoping that they will have picked up on their own, but I want to just kind of lay it out point by point what I got out of listening to you and what I would have gotten out of listening to you if I were still locked in a cell. Because you are a mastermind. You are what I would have wanted to become. Somebody who is serving a long sentence, didn't have any mechanism to get out, but yet somehow put himself on a path, put himself on a track so people would take notice. And you nonchalantly said, I videotaped Julie Stewart. But I would submit that you put yourself in a position years before so that you would have been trusted as the video guy. So when an opportunity came forward, you were there. And then you could, when you met somebody like Julia Stewart, you were in a better position to talk with her and let her see who you are. And then you took the extra effort of writing letters to her and influencing her and making her feel in her heart, here's an individual, I want to go the extra effort. And she used her credibility and faith to reach out and get lawyers. I mean, all of this is an enormous amount of energy and effort. And it's very important for me that the people that we're communicating to in prison really get that message, because they're going to say, oh, that could never happen to me. Well, you're right. It will never happen to you if you spend your time hanging around the wrong people, and if you spend your time becoming the master of the spades game or keeping up with the Kardashians. But if you work hard, if you set clear goals, if you stay focused, you can achieve things that very few people think are possible. And you're listening to a man who once had a life sentence plus 140 years, and yet now he's outside, and look at him. You've got the evidence right in front of you. He's got his computers laid up, his professional mic. And how long have you been out, Luis?
I'm going on a year and about 4 months.
So in less than 18 months, you see what he's doing. He's really making things happen. But 5 years ago, I suspect that there are many people that would have said, man, why are you working so hard? Nothing matters. But Luis always knew something matters, and he made something happen about it. Tell us what you've been doing since you've been out. How are you earning a living, and what are you doing with your life, Luis?
Well, back to a second what you were saying, we were talking about we have to create our own life in prison. Yes, you have to do that. And yeah, I did put myself in that position for videotaping and electronics. All right. I would, not only study on it, but then I would convince, the staff that, hey, we need to do this. And when that happened, that would put me in the position. But no matter what you're doing in prison, you have to do that. That keeps you busy and away from the bad element, like you say, away from the spades table, away from the TV. You're focusing on something good. You are becoming useful. So not only do the inmates need you, your assistants are doing something, but staff will wind up needing you too to help present whatever you're doing to the inmates. And it gives you life, and it teaches you, all right, how to help other people instead of being selfish and thinking only of yourself. But today I'm doing good, okay? I'm not getting rich or anything like that. I got my own little driving business. I'm having a good time with that. And I'm breaking into the podcasting and doing book narration now for ebooks. This is something I highly recommend to any of you guys in there. It's an easy thing to do. Buy a microphone, buy a little recorder, okay? And hook it to your computer, and you can record electronic books. Okay, they don't ask you anything about your background or anything else. They don't care. And it's good money, and you can either earn a 50% of the royalty, okay, or they can pay you a flat out fee. And it's something you do at nighttime. You're not going to get rich off it, but it gives you extra income when you're not doing nothing,
That is great. What kind of money can somebody expect to earn? I mean, you've got a very nice voice, and I could see how somebody want to buy an audiobook and have you listening, reciting it. But what is the income for somebody that wants to do something like that?
Well, it all depends. If the professional people are making hundreds of $1,000s a year, okay, and they have no more equipment than I do. Okay, That's the wonderful thing about the technology today. It allows you to use the minimal amount of equipment. You don't need huge recording boards or any of that nonsense. Okay. On the average, the small guy would be making probably about maybe, I would say, between $10,000 and $25,000 a year. Okay. But remember, this is a part-time thing. This is just something you do to help supplement your money. If you really want to get into it and you're good, you have a good voice, you read well, you're going to make a lot of money.
Well, that's another pearl that you're delivering to our audience, because these are things that people can be preparing for while they're inside. They can be developing their reading skills so that they are confident reading for several hours at a time. And that's there's just so many things that somebody can be doing while they're in prison, but they've got to have a hope. They've got to have a hope, and that hope comes from people like you who are out here doing it. You're also, besides doing video and audio work, you'd mentioned this driver business that you have. Tell us a little bit about how that is contributing to your lifestyle right now.
Well, it's just a basic transportation private car business. It keeps me busy. Excuse me. It's one of those kind of things. The unfortunate part about it is you have to build up the clientele. Okay. But once you start doing that, the clientele constantly calls you back because you do what you say you're going to do. My vehicle is always clean. It's always safe. I'm there when they call. They tell me to be there at 1:30. I usually get there 10 minutes early. I clean my windows and everything all day long. They're getting into a nice, clean, safe vehicle. And when they do that, then they want to call you back because they've ridden in cars that are not as nice. Okay. So I do other things too, but that's, the main things that keep me going.
Well, the thing that I like about your story, Louis, is you're a man who's never given up. Despite having a life plus 140-year sentence, you never gave up. You never fell into that routine of saying, the hole's just another part of the penitentiary. We do my time anywhere. You were always focusing on building yourself to be a man of value. And because of your hard work over time, you found the right people who were able to open doors for you. And a lot of people are living in times right now where they may see policy shifts and maybe losing hope. Well, it's my job as a man who has a lot of passion in my heart for people that I left behind to try and share a message. I'm just so grateful to you for taking the time this evening and sharing your story with the audience inside of the Bureau of Prisons.
Well, I have you to thank too, and you're earning freedom. Okay, I'm doing some of the things that you handed my way. Gave me the opportunity to do, and thank you very much, Michael.
Well, this is a community, and I look forward to continuing our friendship. And any other people who get out of prison, I hope that they'll reach out so that we can record their stories as well, because the reality is I learn a lot from Luis, who's been advising me that I need to start a community. And if I can carve some extra time out of my schedule, I'm going to do that. But I'm just grateful to you for sharing a little bit more of your inspiring story with our audience tonight.
You're welcome, Michael. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thanks again. We'll be back tomorrow with another inspiring story of somebody who's gotten out of prison and become successful, just like everybody inside can do if they follow this path of living a values-based, goal-oriented life. Stay focused. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike.